Here at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And before we get started today, I owe a little bit of an apology. We have skipped the last 2 weeks, and it wasn't a conscious thing. I just kind of spaced out and forgot to get guests for the show. So we had to take a 2-week off. We may take some weeks off on between. I've been doing this thing for 8 years now, and it gets a little bit of a grind to have a guest every single week, and we've done this for 8 years. So I did take 2 weeks off, and I'm glad I did. It kind of made me a little bit more refreshed. And you're in for a treat today because our guest today is Chris Mercer from Mercer Capital. He just sold his firm. Well, actually sold it quite a while ago, but he sold a big piece of it again just recently. And we're going to talk with Chris about the process of doing an internal transaction versus an external transaction, using an ESOP, and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So let's bring Chris in and we'll start the show. Hey, Chris, how are you today?
I'm fine, Josh. I'm glad to be here with you.
Well, it's always a pleasure talking with you. You're such an intelligent and erudite guy when it comes to talking about how to make a private business work and how to transition effectively out of a private business. And frankly, you and I have done, a pretty similar thing. We both transitioned out of one of our businesses as we got over 70. So let's hear a little bit about your story.
All right. Well, I started Mercer Capital in 1982, so 40-some years ago. And we have grown since then to, I think we are in the low 50s in terms of employees, which makes us one of the larger independent valuation firms in the country. My goal when I started was to build a business as opposed to building a little firm where I could make a good amount of money. And so I determined early on to invest in the business and have continued to do that. So we grew, we developed something of a national reputation, largely because I and others at Mercer Capital have been active in speaking and writing about business valuation, literally all over the country. In January 1, 2006, we sold 49.9% of the company to a newly created ESOP in a leveraged transaction.
And ESOP stands for Employee Stock Ownership Plan, for those
Yes.
who may not know.
Okay. The ESOP was able to successfully amortize the debt over about 8 years with contributions and distributions. So it owned its stock outright. Then we considered a number of other transitions over a period of time, but we just didn't quite have a meeting of the minds. But we were prompted, I think, by an unexpected offer from a large bank, and it caused all of us here to think pretty seriously about what we wanted for the future. And what I determined is that it was worth giving up a premium in terms of pricing for the ability to work with the people that I like as long as I want to. And so we put together a plan where they have bought now. They own 90% of the company and I own 10.
Oh, Chris, let's talk about this a little bit. Not the financial side, because I'm assuming, or actually, let's talk about the financial side first. A lot of business owners will go for the maximum they want to live with a fair amount of unhappiness after they sell the business. And then other business owners like you will take less, but their happiness factor after they sell the business is way, way, way higher. Now, I'm going to assume that either of these sales gave you enough money. Am I correct in that?
Yes, I have enough money to live, fortunately, for the rest of my life, unless I squander it and do something foolish.
So the truth is, getting maximum may not be in your best interest. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And in my case, we have been a profit sharing company since the late 1980s. And by profit sharing, I mean that we have a plan in place where the staff shares pre-tax, pre-bonus money. We create a pool, and then initially 30% of that went to staff bonuses. And then that number has risen over time as we've grown and stabilized at 60%. So that's a multi-million dollar pool of cash bonuses each year. That includes this year about a $500,000 profit sharing contribution, plus 90% of the earnings of the company for the ESOP. So what we have here for our employees is retirement planning on steroids. We have 7 or 8 people with over $2 million in retirement benefits at this point, and a number of them are coming along, really well. So our folks should be able to retire comfortably based on the benefits of Mercer Capital. And quite frankly, that was worth a lot of money to me to leave that legacy for our people.
Yeah, and so talk about a little bit the non-financial side of leaving your business. Now, if you had sold to the bank, what would have been different about where you are today?
Well, I would have had a 3 year period of time in which they would withhold pay a portion of the purchase price. And then I'd be working for somebody else instead of working with people that I like. And that to me was worth a lot. I have enjoyed being here. I like the people that I work with. And it's worth money to me to have the opportunity to. I mean, they would have to have a complete change of attitude to take my office away, or to take the little bit of support I have away. And so at this point, I can do pretty much what I want to do, and that's what I do. I take only engagements that I'm interested in, and then if I sell something, I'll pass it to somebody else. Because I guess they want me to own a little stock because maybe I still attract business.
I would say that's probably a truth. So here's the thing that I have found, and if you could comment on this, I'd appreciate it,
Sure.
is that when you do a third-party sale, if you had sold to the bank, you might have had an employment contract for a year or so, maybe 2 years. Likely they would have ended that employment contract early, and you would have had lost all contact with your business that you created relatively quickly. And instead, when you do an internal transaction, you sort of wind down. You don't just have a cliff that happens where you walk out the door with a couple of boxes and stuff and you say goodbye.
Exactly.
So, how did that factor into your thinking whether you would sell to a bank for a big dollar or continue on with the ESOP plan that you had, which was enough?
Yeah. Well, for me, I knew that our people were not getting comfortable with the potential buyers. I mean, we were talking to people on Zoom. They were unable to travel. We were unable to travel. And so the timing was just not right. And so I told them, why don't we get together and work out a plan where you guys acquire, the rest of my stock or most all of the stock, and then you're in charge. And so 3 years ago, I sold down below control, and then last year I sold some more, and the year before, and then last year I sold another 10%. So, and it's sold, as you know, at an appraised price, and it's I think a reasonably conservative appraisal. But like I say, I've been working for a long time, and I have this basic philosophy of spending less than you make. So I have accumulated sufficient funds to retire if and when I want to.
Cool. So let's talk about the ESOP for a little bit because this is a really interesting thing. And especially for the construction owners who are working with us that have over 25 employees, you might find an ESOP is the better way for you to leave your business versus trying to sell it to your managers, excuse me, or finding a third party to buy it. And finding a third party to buy a construction company is very challenging.
Right.
So I'm assuming that you guys became an S corporation at some point.
We became an S corporation uh, within a nanosecond of the time that I was able to, 1986 or 7, I'm not sure.
So when you sold your company to the ESOP, the first 49%, you already were an S corporation. Is that correct?
Yes, we were already an S corp and had been for years.
So,
Okay.
Chris, there are some special tax benefits that you get as an S corporation when you become an ESOP. Can you talk about that for a second?
Well, there are if one sells stock to an ESOP, then there is a potential for rolling over the proceeds into a basket of eligible securities to avoid capital gains, to have the money working for a period of time. Um, that is attractive to some people. Uh, I was still employed when we did the ESOP, and I am in the ESOP, and so that benefit was not available to me. But my inclination would has always been to pay the tax and then take care of my business, because I just have I never have thought that I would invest in a basket of securities and then pay the tax as the securities mature or are sold or whatever happens. But some people have done very well like that, because if you take several $1 million and you avoid 20 plus percent taxes, then that 20% is working for as long as you're working.
Oh, Chris, let's talk about the company. Now, 49% of the company was sold to an ESOP. That means 49% of the net profit the company had was non-taxed or tax deferred, to be more
Well,
more 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 accurate.
well, tax deferred, yes, and like I say, so 49.9% of the earnings of the company were provided to the ESOP in the form of a contribution or a distribution. And for that period of time, my 50.1 came in the form of a bonus or a distribution. So that if we made $1 million, say, then they're going to get 49.9% of it, and I would get 50.1% of it. So
And
that
that 490,000 would go into the ESOP,
yes,
and you would use it to repay a note, or maybe buy more stock, or there's things you can do with it. You could buy new companies, as a matter of fact.
what they're doing now is buying. They've generated cash to buy my stock. You know,
Yes.
and so the ESOP is debt free at this point and owns 90% of the company. So uh, now, if we make that $1 million, then the 900,000 will go to the ESOP.
And there's no taxes paid in the year that goes to the ESOP. The taxes would be paid when the ESOP buys the stock back from departing employees.
Right. Or yeah, or when yes, when the stock is distributed and the ESOP buys it back.
All right, so
That,
it's a magnificently powerful way of creating cash to forward your business purposes.
well,
Now,
particularly in a professional services firm, now, because we all we have are people. 60%
right,
of our 60% of our expense is people.
right,
So that provides a lot of payroll for the ESOP.
yes. So the other side of an ESOP, and I think this is really important. I've been involved in ESOPs that did the transaction only for the financial advantages of an ESOP. And frankly, the employees suffered 5, 6 years down the road. Now, in my opinion, if you're going to do an ESOP, it's a really great financial tool. There's no question about that. Probably one of the most powerful financial tools I
Mhm.
can imagine. On the other side is called having an ESOP culture. Can you talk a little bit about what an ESOP culture is and why it's so important?
Well, we have always been, as I say, a profit sharing and a collegial and a sharing group of people. Um, while sales for our professionals are important, we are not an eat what you kill kind of company. There are a number of factors, and the way in which bonuses are paid, and management of our company has worked on that so that everybody uh, believes that the system is reasonably fair, and over time it is fair. Uh, what we have are a bunch of people who are interested in developing the company and growing the company because it's in it. It truly is in their self-interest. We didn't sell 30%. They had 50% of the company to start with, and we kept the profit sharing plan. Many times people will terminate a profit sharing plan in lieu of the ESOP, but we chose not to do that, and the value suffered as a result. But that was just part of. We wanted people to embrace the ESOP and to be interested in it and excited. And now, as there's some real money in there, people are beginning to understand that it's real.
Yeah, well, that's always true. Here's what I was really talking about, Chris, is that what I consider the successful ESOPs, both financially and emotionally, are the ones that essentially create a very open business about how the business is run, what the decisions are. They often have an ESOP committee, which sort of says, "Gee, this is how we want our ESOP to be run." Most ESOPs, I think, that are what I would consider successful, have adopted a form of open book management, meaning they share their numbers with
Yeah,
the people. They help the people in the company become financially, aware of what happens in a business. Now, in your business, that's relatively easy because you do that. But if you go
yeah,
to a blue collar construction company, those guys in the field wouldn't know a P&L if they fell across one. So it really becomes incumbent on the ESOP, the people who form the ESOP, to start opening up how their company runs and share key information with their people. And those that do, that tend to get much, much, much better performance than their fully profit paying
sure.
peers. Has that been your experience?
I think so. Josh, I would make one caveat. There are people out there who I guess originate ESOPs in companies, and sometimes they push the envelope in terms of valuation. And when people get aggressive in terms of value with an ESOP, there is danger that it won't work like it was supposed to work. I wanted our people to have a real tangible benefit that they could see over time as their accounts matured. And after since '06, I guess that's a number of years. And like I say, they own 90% of the company, and the company is worth a fair amount of money today because we are a profitable company.
Yes, yes.
Thankfully, thankfully,
Well, in my experience with ESOPs, if you push the envelope, you're going to have a very unhappy experience with the Department of Labor because it seems like the Department of Labor has decided they're going to audit every single ESOP in the country because they consider ESOPs abusive, which some
yeah.
are, which is really too bad.
Well, this one I can assure you is not. It is not abusive, and it's fortunately been very successful and made for a really nice transition for me. But I think in terms of transition, one of the things that I have been doing for the last 3 years plus is working on, well, I walk 5 miles minimum every day. I've averaged 6.1 miles per day for the last, 3 plus years, since
Okay,
December
good.
15th, 2019.
Good for
And,
you.
and then I play pickleball. And
Hmm.
so I play pickleball. I also, uh, last night, I helped cook 50 meals for the Church Health Center here in Memphis, and that was a marvelous experience. I'm doing more of that sort of thing, and I've been fortunate to be on the board of a sizable nurse staffing company as the chair of the executive committee, and that keeps me interested and focused because I'm helping them with their management transition. The chair lady is in her late 60s, and she is interested in slowing down, and I've been working with her son to come in as the chief operating officer. So, hopefully we'll make that transition just fine as well. But all of those things keep me interested. I mean, I'm not focused on, what's in this office all the time. And I think that's why I feel so blessed to be where I am.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you can develop, and this is one of the things I like about ESOPs, is that it allows the selling owner to sort of phase out of the business they're selling to the
Mhm.
ESOP, which we like to say is selling to your employees, although you're technically not doing that, but you really are.
Sure.
The It gives you time to dabble and say, what am I interested in, and where can I take my skills that I developed and help my community or help other businesses, or it just gives you a chance to sort of poke around and see what's next in my life and what will get me excited. And it appears that you've done that really well.
Well, I hope so. I've seen too many people who I've seen a few people who literally retired and died. I've seen a number of people who sold their business and, using your term, have seller's regret, remorse over losing what was important to them and not having something to take its place. So when I talk to business owners, I say, be thinking now about what it is you want to do when the management transition occurs, because that transition is inevitable. 100% of companies will transition management over time.
Or
Uh,
they close down.
well, that's another transition.
It is. So, so Chris, unfortunately, we're out of time.
Okay, well, it's been fun.
And I'm going to bet some of the folks listening might want to have a conversation with you. Would that be okay?
That would be fine.
So,
Go to mercercapital.com or uh, mercerc at mercercapital.com, or check my blog out, chrismercer.net. My latest post is talking about walking.
okay.
So,
I might
but
have to do that. So I
but
got two.
I'm,
Good.
I'm I'm visible.
Okay, cool.
If you want to find me, you can find me.
Okay. Well, we've got two things I'd like you to do. One I've asked you to do a whole bunch of times, which is please go to where you're listening to this podcast and give us an honest rating and review. I would love to hear what you're thinking about. And the second is I put together this thing called the periodic table of business planning elements. And it's kind of a joke thing I did for fun, a zillion years ago, and just redid it because it was out of date. But it has 39 strategies that you can use to move your company forward. Love to send it to you. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. It's really easy to get. You just go to www.sustainablebusiness.co/periodic. That's www.sustainablebusiness.co/periodic. This is Josh Patrick. We're with Chris Mercer. You're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really,